You know what? Zion Clark, I'm calling you out. He's a man with a tweed jacket, elbow patches, and he is a cuckold. James!
What have you been up to, man?
I've been thinking about you, buddy. You got me in trouble.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Uh-oh.
Our dear mutual friend of ours stopped by a couple days ago, Jesse. He walks up to me. This is like later at night. He's getting ready to take a trip. He's got an RV. I had a generator I was wanting to sell. So he come over to check it out. He ended up taking it. But I hadn't seen him in months. And he comes out here at night, doesn't say hi, doesn't say anything. There's no greeting, no salutation. He immediately says, "Is James a fucking Democrat?" And I was like, no, and I don't think so. I was like, I think he would, I was like, I don't want to label him, but I think he'd be a little bit probably further to the left than a Democrat. And he yelled at me for 20 minutes.
Huh.
Yelled at, I'm serious. Oh, yeah. He was heated. He was yelling at me for 20 minutes about how Democrats are destroying this country and,
really,
they could pour gas on that bridge where all them Haitian refugees are and just light them all on fire. He don't care. And he went off so much so, I went to talk to my renters the next day who live right up the hill, and they were asking me if everything was okay. And it took me a second. I was like, oh, they heard Jesse out there yelling at me and thought some guy come over to I don't know. But love Jesse. Love him. I think he loves you too.
Very passionate.
He's very passionate. And he gets that dad thing where his face just gets red. He's got like veins bulging out. He's just yelling. He's so animated, so upset. And I got a kick out of it.
I don't think anyone's a Democrat. I don't even think Democrats like to call themselves Democrats.
No, nobody is. Everybody's an independent. Anybody you ask, I don't know. I guess there's a couple people that will align with one party or another. But everyone's
the like true Democrats that I've met, they're like wealthy, middle class, like white Democrats. They're like so like, oh God, they're so gross.
Yeah, they really are.
The way they talk is like very unappealing and very like politician like.
Did you ever hear of that series? I think it's called Who is America? Sacha Baron Cohen, the guy that did Borat. He did this series. It is absolutely fantastic, and it's required reading for this podcast. It is so brilliant. He does
email it to me.
Yeah, I don't know what it's on. It was originally produced on Showtime a few years back, but he does all these different characters and puts on the makeup and the whole deal, and he'll go and interview people. And I think Donald Rumsfeld. He dressed up as this character and interviewed Donald Rumsfeld, and it's so cringy because he starts seriously asking these questions where you're like, oh no, you can't ask Donald Rumsfeld that. And
I'm sure it's a setup, right? Rumsfeld doesn't know what's coming.
No,
I presume.
Yeah. Rumsfeld did not know. He got sued by a lot of people. There was a senator that had gotten.
Is that the Borat guy?
Yeah, Borat.
Okay, I somewhat remember this sort of. But
there was a senator that had gotten accused of sex with a minor or something like that. And he shows up. He's with Mossad in this character. And he's got this pedophile detector, and he's like, "See if we can show that you're not." And he would swing it by him, and it would keep beeping. And the guy's getting really pissed. He's like, "I'm sorry, something's not working." He goes over to these other people, and then it keeps beeping when it goes on.
That's hilarious.
The guy's like, "This interview's over. I'm not doing this. This is a sham." It's so. But anyways, okay. My point was, there's a character on there that's like your stereotypical Weasley Democrat, beta male. And it's just, whenever I think of somebody that identifies as a Democrat, I always think of that character. He's overweight. He's just like, ugh. But he's...
It's just the worst. It's just the worst party. It exists because it takes a lot of money to run a campaign, you know. So all these, like any wealthy sort of not racist psychopath Republicans are going to gravitate to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Koch brothers funding a lot of shit in the Democratic Party, you know, people like that.
Yeah, Koch brothers are some of the biggest funders of NPR.
The Gates Foundation. Like
both of them.
Yeah. People like that.
Yeah, people like that.
Have you heard of, do you follow Right Wing Raj here? I haven't featured this yet. I wanted to feature this channel.
Not a whole, I haven't recently. I used to check him out from time to time.
There's a lot of Pat Robertson, but this most recent one here, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. This guy is quite a trip.
It is time for us to get in the fight. It's time for us to push back against these lies and tell these folks in the media, tell these folks in our government, we are not afraid of you. Because standing behind me is my father. He's the same one that stood behind us in our revolution. The same one that stood behind us in our Civil War. The same one that stood behind us when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And he's the same one standing behind us now. We're not afraid, and we're ready to fight.
So he basically, he goes into this church and he's like asking for people to vote for him, basically. Or he doesn't say it that explicitly, but you're not supposed to do that. You can't do that. You can't go to a church and be like, vote Republican.
I don't think it's illegal.
Yes, it is. As a campaign finance, or it's separation of church and state, at least.
No, that's not. Separation of church and state's passing laws in regards to a specific religion or banning specific religions. It's not. I mean, maybe there's a campaign finance thing.
Tax-exempt status at the very least.
Yeah, so the church. So yeah, I was speaking kind of on his end. The church, if they are explicitly endorsing one candidate, then they're no longer a charity organization, and they're a political. I guess they would go from a CO13 to a CO14.
We know how this shit works. They never do it explicitly. Yeah. They like ride the edges, and no one ever calls them on it.
Yeah. It's scummy. I always think it's hilarious. Every time these guys like him or Al Sharpton, they're all doing Martin Luther King impressions. You notice that? Every single one. They try to get the same cadence to their voice every single time. Be original, guys.
He's not like a preacher or anything. He's the lieutenant governor of North Carolina, and he got famous after all this. I want to go through just a little bit of it here.
Okay.
Robinson is opposed to abortion, rejects climate change, does not support legalized marijuana. On his Facebook page with more than 100,000 followers, Robinson posts often impugn transgender, Muslims, former President Barack Obama, and African Americans who support Democrats. He was a truther, the birther. Remember that, the Obama thing where they thought he wasn't born in America?
Yeah, I remember.
He was part of that. This political cartoon that he kind of this is what actually went viral.
That cartoon doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the hypocrisy behind it. That's what bothers me. That you would portray a black man just because he's in the GOP as a Klansman. That you would portray an American Indian woman, a Native American woman, Olivia Oxendine, who is a Lumbee Indian, and who has had to face the Klan face to face and their egregious actions and has had to fight against them. You would portray her as something that vile. The hypocrisy is mind-numbing, folks. And I'm here to tell you right now, this office is not going to stand by and let it go by. And when I'm not going to go along to get along, I'm going to call them out on every time.
This is the one that went viral. He's like going off on this fucking newspaper, dude, because they made a political cartoon about him.
Well, is it even about him necessarily?
Yes.
Okay. I just said like GOP member, and
well, yeah.
Saying the GOP in general is different than saying this one individual person.
This was after that big NRA speech he gave, where he kind of got big.
Yeah.
He's saying they portray him, basically, him here with a Klan robe and hood on.
Okay, yeah, so it says GOP members, state school board. Okay, so I guess the school board members that are GOP.
I mean, he's
GOP.
angry. He's legit angry here. Hold on, let me play another.
Olivia Oxendine, who is a Lumbee Indian, sells itself to millions of people across this state that would put something that vile out. When I understand the person who drew this is an 8th grade social studies teacher. If that's true and he's teaching these falsehoods, because by the way, wasn't anybody in the GOP that promoted the Ku Klux Klan and the ideals thereof?
Okay, that's because the parties switched.
Yeah.
You can't tell me the Republicans aren't the racists, dude. They only aren't because the parties switched positions. And plus, the NRA itself has all these ties, you know, all these connections. Like, they wouldn't support gun rights. They weren't supporting gun rights in the 20s, the 30s, and the 60s because that's when the blacks had the guns. There's a long history of this, man.
Yeah, the whole story was that Fred Hampton and I forget the other guy's name. The other guy's still alive. They started the Black Panther Party out in California, and that's what the whole thing was.
Right.
They were trying to get their gun rights, and everybody was like, "Oh no, we don't want them to get their gun."
Yeah, we got to get these gun laws to enact these gun laws.
Yeah, no, it is true too, and also I've heard that a lot. The whole racist thing, and well, the Democrats, you know, it was the Blue Dog Democrats that were in the Klan, and yeah, the parties did switch, and incidentally. Like, I do know Klans members. I grew up around a lot of these people. And Hillary voters, they are not. Bernie Sanders voters, they are not. You know, it's a strictly right-wing, pretty far right-wing organization. They're not in favor of expanding childhood education, let's say. So
they're not interested in diversifying management.
Usually not. I wouldn't talk to them about it very much, but from what I remember, it wasn't top of their list.
What about like late childhood hormone therapy? What do you think their opinion on that would be?
Yeah, I think they were really for that. They'd probably love it.
Well, the whole thing with the Second Amendment started as a result of the state militias being scared of slave revolts. That was what the Second Amendment was initially for to give the state militias the weaponry. That's what created the state militias.
Yeah, I mean that was
scared of slave uprisings.
A big part of it for sure. That was kind of the big threat to the threat to the nation, I guess, at the time, and it was something everybody was worried about. So
I wish I was black sometimes, man. I swear I would hate guys like this. Look at his face; he's so angry. Like him and Candace Owens, people like this, dude. I would be going hard at him, dude. I can't say shit though, except make fun of him. He's so angry about this cartoon; it just cracks me up. It's like, what do you want to do? Ban all the cartoons now? Can't make cartoons, guys.
The similarities between the religious right in this country and I guess what would be the religious right in the Middle East, and how diametrically opposed they think they are to like the Muslim extremists that bombed the Charlie Hebdo buildings in France for producing a cartoon, and just how close an ideology they are to the religious right in this country, and all the things that they would like to do if they could get away with it.
Well, it doesn't work because they're racist too. That's the problem. Otherwise, they might get along a little better. Of course, after the pullout from Afghanistan, there was a lot of in liberal media, they were talking about these conservatives speaking well of the Taliban, but I didn't really look into it to see if that was true or not, so I can't really say. But
the Taliban, good fighters, I will tell you, they're good fighters. We have to give them credit for that. They've been fighting for 1,000 years. That's what they do, is they fight. The Taliban has circled the airport, and who knows if they're going to treat us right. All of a sudden they'll say, well, frankly, if they were smart, they'd really, and they are smart, they should let the Americans out.
Conservatives in this country?
Yeah.
In this?
Like, Tucker Carlson and these type of people.
Huh. That seems very out of character.
I didn't follow the trail, but...
Yeah.
Well, now that we've pissed off the right, let's piss off the left.
You'll see I belong and I'm free. Come hell or high water.
Anybody paying attention? Am I doing it right?
and you have some experience kind of wrestling, not not at the collegiate level or anything like that, but just recreationally.
Yeah.
This guy has no legs.
I study the best guys in the world, and I compete against the best guys in the world. And now I'm going to beat the best guys in the world, and that's just how I see it. I had posted a video on my Instagram, and I was running real fast. Like, I did about 25 yards in only like 3-4 seconds.
He went viral after one of these videos of him like walking really fast on his hands, and he set the record, I think. And he's actually a wrestler.
Be tough to get him in a knee bar.
I thought I had a more clear video of this.
Wrestling Geodude.
See here, this is where he gets him. See, look. First of all, look at his arm. He's way bigger. He's like twice the size of this guy, right? Because they have the same weight. They're in the same weight class, but he just has arms and an upper body. So he is gonna have way more upper body strength than his opponent, for one.
I'm like, is this good? I don't know. I'm with my very limited wrestling experience, jiu-jitsu experience. I'm just trying to think: is this going to be surely it's a disadvantage
for him? You think for Zion?
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, it's.
Well, here's the thing: wrestling is all about the hips, right? You got to control the hips. This guy doesn't have any hips.
Yeah, for the takedown, sure. Like with jiu-jitsu, it'd be different because you're starting off on the ground, and he's got less things to attack with, but there's less to attack on him.
Right.
I think he would probably get wins just because nobody is used to, wrestling somebody like that. Wrestling somebody that doesn't have the bottom half of their body.
Right.
But I'd be down.
He's so much stronger, though. He's basically twice as buff as his opponent in his upper body.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big advantage.
You know what? Zion Clark, I'm calling you out. I got my BJJ gi right here. Come on down to Kentucky. We're going to do this for America.
He looks pretty jacked, dude. I don't know.
He does look jacked.
I don't know. He doesn't have enough pillars. Don't you need 3 pillars in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Like 3 points on the ground at all times or whatever?
Yeah, you need 3 points. See, like so many sweeps that I know, it's all about like getting your leg under their leg, and then you shrimp away from them. And
I don't understand what he can do. He can't do shit because he only has arms. There's no leverage. He can't wrap his legs.
Yeah, and your hips.
He can't armbar. He can't
certainly for throws. Yeah.
He can rear naked. But
he could wrist locks.
Not really, because he doesn't have his feet on the ground to put any leverage against the wrist.
Yeah. No.
You just hang on while you have him dangling.
The thing, he would be able to move a lot quicker, though.
They don't look the same weight to me. Zion looks like he would weigh less.
Oh, got out.
It's pretty good.
See, he's trying to he's wanting to wrap his legs around his opponent's legs to kind of pin his hips down.
He can't.
Exactly.
But I mean, Zion Clark's very athletic. I think.
Oh, of course he is.
I think you are messing up.
Open invitation, Zion. IBJJF rules.
See, this is the move you got to go for. Gets him in a crucifix here, and then he's kind of done at that point. Kind of hard to see, but he gets him in a crucifix, basically. And that's the thing. You get your legs on one of his arms. You get your 2 arms on one of his arms. I mean, he's done for.
Yeah, spot like that. It's just, I think it would be probably a lot harder. I don't know. I've never.
It'd be very strange, but.
Yeah.
I think you can take him, man.
Maybe.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website. Our line of cutting-edge products is available at our lowest prices of the year, and we are still running free shipping, so get it while it lasts, guys. Free priority shipping. While supplies last, check it out. MetaMaxPerformance.com.
Shire Hemp Farms, your #1 supplier for CBD, hemp, and Delta 8 products. We have new products in right now, like CBD or Delta 8 dab syringes. We have new American-made vape carts in. And we are extending the sale on most products. Use the code ESPOD. Check out to get 20% off and support it. Thank you. Also, new updated stock. We had last year's stock. This is this year's stock. Fresh dug Kentucky ginseng, grown right here on the farm. This is the best fruit I got in the shape of a man, so ginseng, I don't know what that's about. Running a sale as always, 20% off for ES Pod. ShireHempFarms.com. Come check us out. Thank you.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channels. Subscribe to us on Rumble. We have a Rumble now. Check that out. And you can follow us on Reddit. Also, check out our homepage. It will be in the description for all of our contact information. All right, let's talk about Tankies, man. I've been going back and forth with these guys online lately. There are really quite a number of them. I can't really believe it. I'm very surprised. I just sort of been going through my life the last few decades, not really realizing that there's a lot of money being poured in from the Russian government, for one, that's propping up a lot of this. There's also just a lot of younger people that have read about the history and sort of seen the colonialism and imperialism of the United States, and I guess they automatically assume that the other side must be pure and good based on that. I'm assuming.
Yeah. I'm really interested in this. So you brought it up last week, and I honestly had never heard the term before, and I kind of made an assumption based on some context clues, and I believe I was pretty far off the mark on what they actually are.
It's MLs, right? Marxist-Leninists who are sort of supporters of the CPC and the USSR, which it's fine to be an ML. You can be a Marxist-Leninist and be on the left. Or you can be a Marxist-Leninist and be a complete psycho right-wing authoritarian. It just,
sure.
Marx can be interpreted a lot of different ways, as we said before.
Yeah, I mean, is this like a U.S. thing, or is this?
This is international.
An international?
No, this is international,
Okay. Because when
Hedges
I think
got an RT contract, good. I mean, Chris Hedges is working for RT. I mean,
is he a tankie?
He's working for the Russians. He's taking Russian money. He's not a tankie. He's Chris Hedges. He's an icon.
Yeah, I know that. That's what I'm saying. I know who Chris Hedges is, but
my point is just the fact that there's a lot of money flowing into this movement.
Okay.
There's a lot of money propping up the new media. They're investing in the new media, and that's why there's a lot of support for this stuff online.
Well, let's get into
like
it.
YouTube channels, things like that. Well, what brought
this?
But
who's going to be pouring money? I don't know. You say it's coming from Russian sources. I don't know. My initial reaction is this is probably just the Russians pouring money into creating dissent and chaos in the U.S.
Well, they've already been shown to have been doing that, but
yeah, I'm sure it's not like an ideological thing that they're trying to prop up. They're just trying to.
You don't think they're trying to whitewash their own history?
I think that they have separated themselves enough from that history that they don't have to whitewash it. They can say, hey, we're not the Soviet Union, we're the Russian Federation. This is speculation on my part, but I don't think...
Putin is KGB. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but we're not those guys anymore. That was that thing. We're this new thing.
Well, there was this story on the right going around about this teacher who was Antifa, and he was trying to turn his kids into revolutionaries. This was Project Veritas. Let's look at it here. Here's the first video. This is the undercover video of him. He doesn't know this guy is Project Veritas he's talking to here.
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries.
How do you do that? How do you
scare the fuck out of them? Yeah. Sacramento organization that is under the banner of Antifa is very loosely organized, right? So that when there is like right-wing rallies and stuff, then we'll create an opposition to that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Where would he go to connect to some of these organizations?
I post a calendar every week.
Awesome.
And then and I do it for extra credit, so they get points for doing it. So that encourages them to do it. And I've had students show up for protests, community events, tabling, food distribution, all sorts.
See, most of what he's talking about here, I don't have an issue with, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to follow certain guidelines as a teacher.
Right.
He wants to talk about these as an extracurricular. That's fine. Well, if he's in there preaching Marxism to them in the classroom and talking about the capitalist pigs, and I'd be a little iffy about it.
I don't have a problem with that, but
No.
I do have a problem with some of his other. I have a problem with people like this in Antifa and other left movements. Here's the video of him being confronted on the streets by the hard-hitting journalists of Project Veritas.
Gabriel, hello, how are you? I'm good. I am a journalist with Project Veritas. Okay. Nice to talk with you. Don't mind my colleague recording. We are recording, but I think you're going to be more interested in what I have to say here.
I don't feel comfortable with this.
Well, I think that there's been a lot of uncomfortability in your classroom. I'd like to talk with you about some of the statements you've made. I believe you said it.
You know what Project Veritas is?
Well, we're journalists.
Okay.
No, you're not.
And you mentioned to one of our colleagues that you have 180 days to turn students into revolutionaries. Would you like to expound upon that?
We do not consent to this filming. We do not consent to these questions.
Well, you're in a public place, and I don't think parents consent to their students being, quote, turned into revolutionaries.
What's so bad about being turned into They could have went after something besides that. That doesn't seem that bad, does it?
And that's, I don't know. This is one of those things I would have to hear the context on exactly what he was telling them. You know, turning them into revolutionaries in that, hey, I want to get them really hyped about getting involved in the political system and pushing, you know, the beliefs that they hold most dear. And like, he could have just been being hyperbolic, or if he was in there like directly preaching to them, hey, look, we're going to go out, we're going to advocate for these. I don't know. It's
right. You know, I was kind of on board with it, sort of like it's just a cool teacher. You want a wide range of teachers, right?
Obviously, if a social studies teacher, you have to talk about politics.
Sure.
That's a big part of it. And if you want to hit certain subjects, someone like him is obviously very interested in this stuff. And is he sharing his passion with his students to get them hyped about getting involved in the political process? I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that whatsoever.
He's giving them extra credit for civic activities, protests, going out, food drives, that sort of thing. Well, he's now being fired, obviously, for all the blowback.
Obviously.
And the problem with him is he's a tankie. He had a freaking Mao poster on his wall. He's got a hammer and sickle. He's a Soviet guy. You can't support Mao, dude. I'm sorry. You just can't. It's so stupid. Why? You're not Antifa, dude. You're a tankie. This is what tankies. Here's what tankies want. They want to let it all go to shit. They don't want to improve society. They want to make society worse. So there's a violent revolution. So then they can be the officers on the Politburo, overseeing all the peasants. They want to be the new ruling class. That's all it is, dude. They don't want to do anything to help improve society. Now maybe that's not his specific ideology, but supporting Mao and supporting Stalin, that's the road you're going down, dude.
It's people without a personality that are trying to be edgy. They're interested in politics.
This guy is like every idiot I've met. Like, look at this guy.
He's trying to get laid. He's interested in the politics, and he wants to get some of them hairy armpit lefty chicks.
Here's the thing about Mao. Mao, he said the right things. He hid the fact that he knew he was starving millions of people. You can't support what people say they're going to do. You have to recognize what they actually did. What the policies had actually resulted in.
What was it, 50 million people died under Mao's watch? More than Hitler and Stalin combined.
Well, the problem was Mao was a Stalinist. Mao was a worshiper of Stalin, and when Stalin recollectivized, that's what Mao did. He recollectivized. They were in such a rush to industrialize their societies that
they ended up having a big. They had a big split though. I guess in the late 50s, early 60s, and those kind of become the two.
That was the Cultural Revolution.
Communist. Yeah. I guess that time.
That's when Mao said that Mao basically organized the students to go back out into society and start murdering capitalists.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people dislike the tankie pejorative? This is a tankie. This is a pejorative used to describe Marxist-Leninists who are on the right. These are the people who are authoritarian. They are anti-democratic, either overtly or through their policies, decisions that they want to implement. They want to idealize the Soviet Union. They want to pretend like everything the Soviet Union did was good. They did do good things. They also did a lot of terrible shit. We talked about the
utter failure.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't say it's an utter failure.
I certainly would. There was a project in how depraved human beings can be.
There was also the fastest upward improvement of standard of living of any society in history. I mean, they industrialized the Soviet Union in like 50 years.
Yeah, and it quickly turned to shit because it wasn't sustainable how they were trying to do it, and it was at the complete and utter expense of the people that they were claiming to try to help.
That's exactly the problem. Yeah, it was not socialist in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was just a new it was a new ruling class. It's exactly what Bakunin said. It was a new ruling class. They were still exploiting the labor of the workers. They were just redistributing it in a different way and by different people. They can look at all the terrible things the United States has done around the world and say, look, the Soviet Union was really the good guys in history, but that's not the case. Every state is a bad actor. That's what states are. States are repressive institutions. I mean, name one state that hasn't done terrible shit. I mean, that's what foreign policy is, right? It's trying to improve the status of your state relative to others.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's some interesting philosophical questions around that. Like, if in and of itself, if all states kind of naturally do things that we would consider to be, like, are they bad if that is just how they have to operate? Because it seems like that's how they have to operate. They're
because they exist, we need to keep them existing.
Because we need them to exist to some extent. I think we do. I think we need states. And it's just the fact of them existing that somebody's rights, liberties are going to be trampled on to some extent. Oftentimes yours, or oftentimes someone else's, sometimes yours.
At this point, right? Is that the
line? Yeah, in part, yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, just in general, even pushing business interests overseas. I mean, look, the U.S. obviously has done it in a lot of ways that didn't help us, the people, but sure, there's examples we could take.
The role of the U.S. government,
yeah,
is to protect capital. That's the primary role of the U.S. government since the Monroe Doctrine.
Well, I'm saying, like, you could protect U.S. industry as opposed to push U.S. industry as opposed to other countries' industry for the country, but we're pushing it for the business class,
right?
Which isn't necessarily, we don't have to do it like that. We just have.
Right. If the U.S. had pursued demilitarization after the Cold War, if they had said, "Hey, let's all demilitarize," you think the other countries probably would have done it? For the most part, would anybody have not demilitarized at that point?
Well, I don't know. The example I'm thinking of is like Panama Canal.
Okay.
We went in there. If there were a oppressive regime, like this is what happened in Panama, that kind of took power, was oppressing their own people, and they were also stifling international trade. And we went in there to kind of take that power back from them because we wanted to facilitate the rest of the world to be able to have trade through that vital port. Then that would be, I don't have a real problem with that.
Right.
Depriving a small group of people of their liberties to allow the rest of the country to not lose trillions of dollars. But of course, that's not how we did it. We did it for our interest, and then kind of depriving. We were doing the same thing that they were doing, depriving everyone else of the ability to do the things that they needed to do. But
so the Vanguard Party, this is the idea that Tankies have that they want to. This is the method by which they want to have a revolution.
Hang on, you say you want a revolution? If you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow. I'm just saying.
So this is the idea, right? You have this coup d'etat with the Vanguard Party, and the Vanguard Party is supposed to protect the proletariat and be the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Thanks, guys.
How good of an idea do you think that is?
Well,
Seems foolproof.
Seems foolproof. I hear it worked out well in Russia or the Soviet Union. We were just talking about that. So,
Is it possible to support democratic state socialism of the kind Lenin wrote about without supporting the totalitarian Bolshevik model? Is there such thing as left Marxism or left communism? The spoiler alert, there is. I mean, a lot of people have written about this. Here is a photograph of Anton Pannekoek, famous left-wing Marxist. It's like a nice enough guy. I mean,
it does.
His analysis of the Russian Revolution was that after Lenin and the Bolsheviks came to power, they crippled the Soviets. This is, many people have pointed this out. The first thing Lenin did was crush the Soviets. That was the democratic structure of the Soviet Union when the Bolsheviks took over. The Soviets were already there. There were workers' councils already. There were basically libertarian socialist workers' councils already there. They got crushed. The Bolsheviks destroyed those. They centralized that authority. They instituted rule of their party, which in Pannekoek's view is what led to the institution of the Bolsheviks as the new ruling class. And Pannekoek wrote about council communism. This is very similar to basically anarcho-syndicalism, which we talked about last week, or municipalism, which we'll talk a little bit about this week, I think. So workers' councils would elect delegates who would be instantly revocable and serve only as messengers of the will of the workers' councils, federated nationally with power coming from the bottom up. Basically libertarian socialism. It's, left Marxism and libertarian socialism are on a spectrum in the same area.
So you elect delegates, not representatives. You're electing delegates that are just going to represent the. You said they're immediately revocable.
They are basically like the Electoral College, right? They are elected to give the vote that you give them that you make them vote. You can recall them at any time. They're not given any outside authority other than what you give them.
Seems like I don't know. If you're going to try this system, it seems kind of antiquated at this point with the internet. You just
I think it seems
cut out the delegate.
Oh, you
I'm saying just cut out the delegate. Yeah, you wouldn't. That's why I'm saying it's antiquated.
You could, I guess.
You don't really need that anymore.
I think you might still need them for some. I don't know. Maybe you're right. I mean, we could all do it with a fucking app. I don't know.
If you're going to do that, if you're just going to do direct democracy,
just do referendums for everything.
Yeah, referendum. Then you could do it online, do it in person. We don't.
Then you don't have a nice fancy building to put on your $100 bill or whatever.
I do like buildings.
Supporters of the CPC, which is the Chinese Communist Party, and the Bolsheviks are called tankies. They are apologists for the repression committed by the CPC and Lenin, even though some are apologists for Mao and Stalin's policies that led to widespread famine in Mao's case, slavery, murder, and famine in Stalin's case. The question here is, are you a tankie if you just support Lenin but you don't support Stalin and Mao? And, my answer is not really. Lenin, I need to put up a photograph of Lenin because he's so iconic.
Handsome fellow, too.
I don't know about that.
Oh, you got no taste in men, James. Okay, that's not a handsome photo.
Well, most of his photos were touched up and shit.
Oh, okay.
This is a real photo.
He's like an Instagram model of the 1920s.
So when Lenin came to power through coup d'état, the first thing he did was crush the workers' councils. What do you think the second thing he did was? The second thing he did.
Consolidate the power that he took from the crushed workers' councils?
Sort of. Basically, he hired secret police to root out dissidents, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, he did that too.
Seems like a great guy. We don't want any dissidents because in their mind, this is the whole idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat. You want to crush any opposition to the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Sure,
because you're doing it for good. If you're doing it for good, then it's good.
Yeah, and you can make all sorts of wonderful arguments about we're going out there. We have to protect the people's revolution, and part of that means going out there and rooting out. There was I just learned this word recently, but it was the basically like the petit bourgeois, but the Russian word for it. But it meant farmers that had worked themselves out of complete poverty. And yeah, basically that kind of become the new enemy. Like they knocked down the top level, they knocked down the like lower aristocracy, and then they knocked down. Then it was just anybody that had pulled themselves out of poverty, even if they really did by the sweat off their own back, probably some luck on it, and it just becomes such a vicious witch hunt cycle.
That's what the Cultural Revolution was,
and that's what caused that was the reason for the Ukrainian famine. They basically went and all the successful farmers, they killed them, and then there was nobody left to farm, and 10 million people starved to death, something like that.
Well, my main sort of problem with Lenin, with trying to say, well, Stalin was bad, Mao was bad, but Lenin wasn't really that bad. He did have some good writings. He wrote,
yeah, in practice, he was an authoritarian.
State Revolution was pretty libertarian, though. State Revolution was sort of along the lines of
you have to talk about how the power is going to be spread out when you're having the revolution. But once you have the revolution and you're sitting there trying to figure out, that's when he started scooting a little over towards the authoritarian side.
Well, he was against,
as one does.
He was against reform, and all tankies in my mind that are against reform, I have a problem with. That to me, that automatically brands you as a tankie, because the problem is you can't advocate violence just for violence sake. You have to try every other means first before you resort to violence proactively. It's fine to say, for example, in the United States, we passed a 100% tax rate over 400,000. We did what I want to do. Well, a lot of people that with a lot of money would violently revolt against that. It would be okay to defend yourself in that situation with violence, against violence, but it's not okay to go violently start a revolution when you haven't exhausted all other means.
Yeah, sure.
Not in my mind.
These are the same guys as the right wing militia guys. They just want to go out there and I think I said it last week, LARP, and they want to have the violent revolution. They don't really care much about what happens after. They care. They pretend like they care, but they're not really thinking about that. They want the chaos. And everybody always assumes, I guess, when the chaos ends, that they're going to be sitting on top, that things are going to be better for them at least. They're going to help put things back together. I just see them as being cut from the same cloth.
I agree. They're both on the right. I think it's a right-wing ideology. It's like democracy's not working. We need to try something else, Modern socialists will advocate for positive social change wherever and however they can get it, through reform, through collective action. You lose any moral standing or legitimacy you have in the public eye at that point, in my view. Could you imagine if the citizens of France or Denmark started saying, reformism isn't working, we need violent revolution? It'd be totally ridiculous. France has a functioning democracy. They don't need a revolution. France can organize a general strike at the drop of a hat, and they do constantly. That's why they're such a democratic nation. General strikes are the most effective form of social change by far in a capitalist society. If the workers don't work, the society stops. The capitalists aren't making money at that point. Why do many leftists support Cuba, even though it is a Marxist-Leninist regime? Which it is. The history of Cuba is very interesting. It's one of these colonial countries that has a long history of revolting against imperialism, primarily. And, the revolutions that came after were a result of that. It all goes back to this Jose Marti character. He's like the George Washington of Cuba.
Today we gather to commemorate Cuban Independence Day. 86 years ago, the people of the United States joined with the people of Cuba and helped them free themselves from the yoke of colonialism. After a brief period of transition, on May 20th, 1902, as you well know, Tomás Estrada Palma was sworn in as Cuba's first president. I hasten to add, I was not there.
I don't know why he looks like that. I can't answer that one. He is a figure who supported Enlightenment principles such as freedom, liberty, and democracy. He was a poet and supporter of Cuban independence from Spain. He fought against Spain for Cuban independence. He is referenced in the Cuban Constitution to this day heavily. He is the primary figure of Cuba's history. He also inspired movements in Chile under Allende, Nicaragua with the Sandinistas.
South America, for whatever reason, has such a rich history of these powerful revolutionary figures being born there. I mean, this guy had Simon Bolivar, obviously Fidel, Che.
Así entendemos los revolucionarios cubanos nuestro deber internacionalista. Y por eso decimos y proclamamos que con combatientes cubanos podrá contar el movimiento revolucionario en cualquier rincón de la tierra.
Just something about the place. It really breeds some amazing revolutionaries.
Well, it's just the history, just the history of colonialism. Central and South America have been used as, basically cheap labor for cheap labor and resources.
Yeah.
Really, that's it. It's the pull of the U.S. wanting to buy all these resources in these countries, and the citizens of the countries that those resources are in wanting to nationalize those resources and use them for the country. That's the push and pull of Central and South America, and colonialism. Really, the whole Reagan doctrine. That's what it is.
Those monkeys from those African countries, damn them, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
2/3 of the sugar industry, Cuba's main export, Cuba's only export just about, 2/3 of it was owned by the United States and United States companies when Castro took over and nationalized the sugar industry. 2/3 of it. So, the political system of Cuba. I think it's very interesting. There are some things to learn here, so...
The Cuban Constitution was a result of thousands of broad discussions in advisory meetings involving more than 6 million citizens, which was practically the entire adult population of Cuba at the time. The draft for this constitution was to be either rejected or denied via a popular referendum. The referendum had a turnout of 98%, and out of those 98%, 97.7% voted to accept the new constitution. This almost unanimous agreement was a result of the previous broad discussions, which resulted in 16,000 amendment suggestions. Cuba has 169 municipal assemblies, and each one has an election every 2.5 years. Every 5th year, 3 months after the municipal elections, there is an election to the Cuban Parliament, the National Assembly of People's Power, as well as to the 14 province assemblies. All Cuban elections have had turnouts of over 95% ever since 1976. It is not a requirement for you to be a member of the Communist Party of Cuba to vote or to be elected to any position, and the Communist Party does not propose, support, nor elect any candidates. In fact, the party doesn't participate in the elections at all.
So it is a one-party system, but technically parties are illegal to... The only party is the PCC, and it's not allowed to participate in any way with the government.
Is that real, or they... I mean, I'm sure they say that, but I imagine they have quite a bit of pull in the government, being that they're the only party.
We'll get into that. I want to kind of give an overview of the individual parts of it before we discuss how they function, if that makes sense. Because sure. I think Cuba is an excellent example that we could use as a blueprint at some point for a society.
Anyone over the age of 16 can vote and can be nominated to be a candidate for election in...
So anyone at 16 and over can vote in Cuba. Very interesting. What do you think about that, first of all? Would you let 16-year-olds vote in the United States?
No. I think...
You wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they...
You let them drive, so, I mean...
No, I wouldn't let them drive.
I wouldn't let them drive.
I knew how I drove at 16. It was a nightmare. I don't know. It's interesting. Kids are so susceptible to bullshit propaganda.
Well, 20-year-olds are just as stupid as 16-year-olds, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's an arbitrary line wherever you set the number. It's arbitrary, and I just would err towards being a little bit older and closer to the slightly less stupid age.
I'm
certainly not running for office. They said run for office at 16, right?
Not national office, only municipal office.
Okay, that's no 16-year-olds in office.
One of the 169 municipal assemblies, or one of the 14 provincial assemblies. However, you must be at least 18 years old to become a candidate for a seat in the National Assembly. Neither money nor political parties have a place in the nomination process. Instead, individuals directly nominate those who they think should be candidates. As a result, the Cuban parliament has representatives from across society, including an exceptionally high proportion of women, 48.9% to be exact. In comparison, the percentage of women in the United States House of Representatives is 19.4%. Among all countries, the United States is ranked 101st out of 196 countries in total. Cuba is number 3 behind only Rwanda and Bolivia. Fun fact, Saudi Arabia has a higher percentage of women in its legislative assembly than the United States does. Furthermore, 88% of Cubans participate in what is basically a system of direct democracy. The Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, CDRs, allow anyone over the age of 14 to join, and they meet a minimum of once every 3 months to plan the running of the community, including the organization of public health campaigns to promote good health and prevent disease, the upkeep of the area in terms of waste and recycling, the running of voluntary work brigades, and providing the adequate support to members of the community who are in need of help, for example in the case of domestic disputes. The CDRs also discuss nationwide issues and legislation and feed back their proposals to the National Assembly and other organs of popular democracy.
So this is talking about the CDR. So we talked a little bit about the Municipal Assembly. This is the CDR. This is a different organization. They have several popular organizations, like the labor unions are one and the CDR is one. This is sort of like it's a community group, basically. The Committees for the Defense of the Revolution. The CDR was formed in 1960 after one of the many attempted assassinations of Castro. So this is a questionable organization in the fact that its main role is to root out dissent in the community. So it's not exactly like the secret police. It's more like the neighborhood watch, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
But, I mean, they didn't have it, and then Castro had an assassination attempt, and then he instituted it. So how much do you really blame him? I mean, the fact that man has survived till the age of fucking, what did he die, 88? Or was it?
Yeah, he was in his 80s, well in his 80s.
Pretty remarkable. Something like over 400 assassination attempts.
Falta Mr. Stevenson. Lamentablemente no está presente aquí. El señor Stevenson una vez más dice que no hay violación de las leyes, que los aviones no salen de aquí, que tampoco salen los barcos, por supuesto, que los ataques piratas salen de la nada, que todo sale de la nada.
Yeah, so generally I think of organizations like that. You can make really valid arguments for why they should exist. It's just that in practice, they tend to just seems like they tend to go really south.
Obviously, using it to root out dissent is not what you want it for.
Yeah, not that. Well, they were saying that it's often used for
right. Creating community.
Other purposes.
It creates a community.
Like
it creates a community of citizens for collectively solving problems.
And that's the most important thing, is having being active in the political process, feeling and getting the feeling that what you're doing matters for your community.
Right. That's why municipalism is so.
Just having a community, having an honest to God community that is active, cares, and is able to make change and do stuff and see what's being done. And
if your neighbor doesn't mow his grass, you have his ass tossed in jail for being a dissenter.
Do the sugar plantations with you.
Democracy. But at the heart of the Cuban democratic system is the locally elected delegate. Prior to the municipal elections, residents of all the neighborhoods of that municipality gather to a meeting in order to nominate candidates. If you're nominated, you're free to either accept or decline the nomination. If several people are nominated, a meeting appoints the person whom the neighborhood trusts as their candidate via discussion and show of hands. Up to 8 adjacent neighborhoods make up a constituency. Each candidate is presented with a short biography and photo on an A4 sheet of paper. Election promises or electoral pledges are forbidden. On election day, the elections are conducted via secret ballot like in most democratic countries. then a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 8 candidates from a single constituency are to be elected to the municipal assembly. The polls are guarded by school children, and everyone has the right to monitor the votes being counted.
They don't allow international monitors, which is an issue. They have really high turnout. Everything is really fair and legit about the voting. They don't allow international monitors. They're very skeptical of anything related to the U.S., obviously, so that's why they don't. But it's not a democratic system. We'll get into that.
So let's say that you won your local municipal election. Congratulations! You now get to join the municipal assembly, which will choose from among its members a president, a vice president, and appoint a secretary. As an elected representative, you don't receive a special wage, but you also don't have to pay for related expenses out of your own pocket. You remain at your normal job, carrying out the civic duties in your own time. The duties of a delegate are many and varied, and the role is demanding, requiring an understanding of public policy and finance, business and administration, and the ability to negotiate, explain, motivate, and lead. And because you're known to almost every one of your electors, and you live among them, people will call on you at all hours of the day, with all manner of problems, ranging from broken water pipes to broken hearts. Delegates carry out the inspection and monitoring of services provided by the municipal administration and of the factories, shops, and businesses in their area. The National Assembly is practically the Parliament of Cuba. Out of the Assembly's 612 seats, exactly 50% consist of nominated delegates from mass organizations, namely the CDRs, the Women's Federation, the trade unions, the Students' Association, and the Association of Small Farmers, and 50% municipal delegates. The elections to the National Assembly take place every 5 years at the same time as the Provincial Assembly elections. Deputies in the National Assembly are from all walks of life, and like municipal deputies, they do not receive a special wage for being deputies. The National Assembly is responsible for electing the 31-body Council of State, which is the governing body of Cuba, like a Prime Minister's cabinet. It contains one President of the Council of State, whom you can think of as the Prime Minister of Cuba, as well as 6 Vice Presidents, a Secretary, and 23 additional members.
So that is the legislative body that actually rules Cuba. So we talked about the municipality elections. They were delegates who are basically elected through direct democracy principles, right? They can be recalled at any time for any reason. They are only there to fulfill the will of the people who elected them. But this is the actual body that runs the state, the government. This is the state, basically, of Cuba. The president, the 6 vice presidents, the secretary, and the 23 cabinet members. They are not elected. They are appointed by the National Assembly. So, like in the United States, for example, we have the House, which is elected. They're not delegates, but they are representatives. They're somewhat democratically elected. This is like the Supreme Court, essentially. The Supreme Court is elected by our representatives, appointed by our representatives. It's not elected by us. And you don't really consider the Supreme Court particularly democratic, do you?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
It's the most anti-democratic institution we have in this country. Well, they're essentially political appointees that can never be fired and have a life term. It's very undemocratic.
But they're appointed by the elected representatives, right? So they, theoretically, through several layers of representation.
I mean, I think it's far enough. They're so far removed from the democratic process that they're.
It's crazy because even one layer above democratically elected representatives, and you get the Supreme Court, or you get the Council of State like they have in Cuba here.
Yeah, I mean, they're a couple levels away. They're appointed by the president.
Oh, you're talking about the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court in the U.S., yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Well, they have to be approved, but that's just a rubber stamp, right?
I mean, it just comes down to whoever has the majority in Congress at the time.
It does now. I didn't used to.
Now,
it didn't.
Yeah,
to
not
before,
used to. That's apparently a pretty modern phenomenon, past 20 years or so.
So the Council of State, this is the body that basically rules Cuba. It has total control. It is appointed by the National Assembly, but the Assembly only meets twice a year and mostly just ratifies what the National Council does. They just come in and they ratify everything. So the National Council really is When they say it's totalitarian, that's what they mean. The National Council. The two issues with Cuba, for one, it doesn't have a free press. That's a huge issue, man. And for two, they've outlawed political parties, which I wanted to get your take on. It's sort of an interesting concept because they still have the PCC, and they actually have laws against other political parties from forming in general.
Yeah, I think this
So
is...
if they got rid of the PCC, what about it then, do you think? With no political parties?
I don't know. It's because there's so many, for a functioning democracy, there's so many different pieces that have to kind of work in congruence. And changing the dial on one of those without changing the others, it's kind of hard to say. So you would need like a free press, I think, is incredibly important for any system, any democratic system like that to work.
I agree completely, yeah.
So, if you're changing the other knobs, but you're not adding those really important elements, it's hard to say what effect it's going to have on things. Outlawing, I don't know. I mean, the whole idea about political parties.
People bitch about the two-party system in the U.S., but that's just, there's not enough parties. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, sure. You want to have, good 10, 15, 20 different political parties
we have caucuses. It's sort of the same thing, really. If you look at, like, say, the German elections, they have a lot of parties, but the parties have to ally with each other to get a majority.
And the issue, this is another one of the dials in the U.S. that needs to be changed, is the caucuses could essentially act like different parties. The issue with them is that they are funded by that one party that they fall under the umbrella of.
Big issue.
So you can have a caucus that's I'm going to try to push the Democratic Party this way. Okay, well, you're not getting any funding. Well, you're just dead on arrival then.
Yeah. So basically, Cuba, the system in Cuba is very similar to what Marx and early Lenin wrote about. They have come the closest. They have done the best. If Cuba were to abolish the Council of State and turn the National Assembly, the delegates, into the governing body, that would be a good place to start. That would be what Lenin talked about, dissolving the state, right? Now, that it hasn't happened, obviously, and moves haven't been made in that direction yet, but they certainly could. Cuba has a constitution that's ratified by the people of Cuba. If they did that, if they lifted the ban on political parties, you'd be getting pretty close to, like, left Marxist position. I think the bones are there, right? They have the delegates, they have the direct democracy, all there. It's just the direct democracy is not what's running the country at this point.
And they have the involvement by the people. The key elements that intrigues me about their system, and I think you get a couple roadblocks out of the way, the political appointees and free press, and open it up for different parties, and that would be potentially a pretty good system, a model for the world.
Can everyone vote? Yes, if you were born in Cuba, you are automatically registered to vote. There is no need for you or your parents to do any paperwork or pay any tax. You can vote in all elections when you turn 16.
Having to register
to vote?
Yeah, why? Do you know how old I am?
Because black people can't read that good, man, obviously.
So weird.
Also participate in local elections. Once you turn 18, you can also run for a seat in the National Assembly. Will everyone know who I voted for? Will the secret police come get me if I vote for someone the government doesn't like? No, voting is done by a secret ballot, so no one knows who you voted for except you. Do I have to vote? If you don't want to, then no, you don't have to. Voting is completely voluntary. If I'm super rich, can I spend all my millions promoting candidates that I like? No, it's illegal to spend money promoting candidates. Candidates' biographies and their reasons for standing are simply displayed on local notice boards so that every candidate receives the same exposure.
I love that
Political
idea.
parties are permitted.
The board with they can't make promises. I don't know how I feel about they can't make political promises part of it.
They can't make political promises is really intriguing, because I think just as often as a political promise that they intend to follow is made, there are political promises that they have no intention of following.
Yeah, but you can, if they make a promise, you can try and hold them to that promise. If they don't even have to make promises, you don't even know what the hell they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't like that part of it.
I get
because you're banning something. I don't like the idea of banning shit that doesn't need to be banned, right?
Yeah.
In Cuba, however, they are not allowed to nominate or campaign for candidates. This includes the Cuban Constitution.
That I do like. They are not allowed to campaign. There's no campaign. You just put your name up here, in your bio, right? And everybody's name and bio is up on the board.
All right, so here's what: name, bio, and 5 planks of your platform. Here's my platform. These are the 4 or 5 major issues. They're kind of campaign promises. I guess they could be. You say, hey, I want to push to increase sanitation worker pay. That would be a fantastic system. You can't donate to them. They can't. Yeah.
Well, some countries have that. They have a certain amount of money that they're allowed to use for campaigns, and it's given to them by the government.
Well, if you have the level of civic activism support,
if you know
where people are going up,
everybody that they
and not just that, but if you're making it a point where, hey, I'm a citizen of this country, it's my job to go and read the board, and there's 9 people running for this office, and I'm gonna. They got one page,
exactly.
One page each, and there's no need to campaign.
This is what Bookchin talked about a lot with the whole municipalism thing. Like people want to be a part of a community, and they also want to participate in the process. And at the municipal levels where they do that.
Yeah, and you can see, I guess, the effects of it a lot more on the municipal level. I mean, one of the big problems is in the U.S. at least. Participating in the process, and you kind of get the sense it doesn't matter.
Communist Party, which is forbidden by law from interfering in the electoral process. Wait, hang on. If the Cuban Communist Party can't nominate candidates to the elections, what the hell is the point of it? The Cuban Communist Party is really a product of Cuban history. The Cuban Communist Party traces its ideological roots to the Cuban Revolutionary Party, founded by Cuba's national hero, José Martí, in exile in New York in 1882. Its purpose was to free Cuba from Spanish rule by uniting into a single party all those who wanted Cuban self-determination. Following the 1959 revolution, which swept out the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista, Cuba's progressive forces began a process of uniting into a single party, which finally came to fruition 6 years later when the PCC was formed in 1965. Today, 1 in 6 of Cuba's 11 million people are party members. To become a member of Cuba's Communist Party, a person must first be nominated by fellow workers or neighbors, and then voted in by their local branch. A year has to be served as a candidate member before becoming a full member, as this brings with it responsibilities and duties, especially within the local community. To be a member of the PCC is seen as an honor in Cuba, and members are generally respected as honest and committed revolutionaries.
So he's obviously pro-Cuba here. He's just making the point that the PCC isn't really a political party, which they're not, but they have influence.
Yeah.
They have runoffs. If a candidate does not get a majority, they have regular town halls with representatives. They have recall on all candidates at any time. The problem is freedom of expression is an integral part also of democracy. And this is quoting Reporters Without Borders here. Here's the map, the Democracy Index. See Cuba dark red here. Obviously, reporters can't just go in here and report, right? They have all these restrictions, and it's the same type of thing as North Korea with the reporters, basically. Mm-hmm. They don't have free expression. They don't have freedom of the press. It's a big issue. You have to have free expression, man. Look, I know. I hate fascists too, but you have to let them say their stupid shit so you can prove them wrong. Have to. And this is what the Enlightenment was all about. Democracy and, freedom and liberty. I mean, you can't have one without the other. You really can't. Now, why do people still on the left still support Cuba, even though it's dark red, even though, the Council of the State runs everything instead of the Assembly, like they should? Because it's not that bad, frankly. And it's pretty close. Like, we talked about it. If you got rid of the Council of the State, you lifted you made the Assembly the democratic body, then the laws that make the country so oppressive would be slowly lifted over time through democratic processes. The people of Cuba don't want to limit their own freedom of expression. The people of Cuba don't want the dumb fucking drug laws.
Yeah, it seems like Cuba, and obviously just because of how handicapped they've been for the past 60 years because of U.S. sanctions against them.
It's not sanctions. It's an embargo, which is
embargo. Yeah, sorry, yeah, embargo.
embargo.
Completely cut. Not sanctions. Hey, you can't trade this. Embargo. Nothing whatsoever. You can't do shit.
Each year, the United Nations votes to end the embargo of Cuba. Every country in the world will vote yes to end the embargo, except for Israel and the United States, who has the power of veto. I'm now quoting from Wikipedia. Since 1992, the UN General Assembly has passed a resolution every year condemning the ongoing impact of the embargo and declaring it in violation of the Charter of the United Nations and of international law.
Really harsh conditions like that and few choices for the Cuban government. Oftentimes, authoritarianism tends to be a little higher, and civil liberties tend to get put on the cutting block.
Here's what Human Rights Watch reported about Cuba. Cuba has been criticized heavily by organizations like Human Rights Watch, which is a U.S. sort of backed thing, but it's still fairly accurate. It's so bad in Cuba that, quote, Cuban citizens have been systematically deprived of their fundamental rights to free expression, privacy, association, assembly, movement, and due process of law. Tactics for enforcing political conformity have included police warnings, surveillance, short-term detentions, house arrest, travel restrictions, criminal prosecutions, and politically motivated dismissals from employment. Sounds pretty bad, I know. Pretty rough, man. I mean, in terms of state actions, that's pretty tame, dude. Could you name one state that is better than this in terms of like a Human Rights Watch report?
Yeah.
Maybe Finland or something.
It's certainly not the hellscape that it's made out to be.
No, they're not. The police don't even have guns, dude.
They're doing a pretty good job considering, and if they ever got welcomed into the international community, it seems like the will towards an open, libertarian, democratic country is really there.
Estados Unidos intervienen en América invocando la defensa de las instituciones libres. Fusilamientos, sí, hemos fusilado. Fusilamos y seguiremos fusilando mientras sea necesario. Nuestra lucha es una lucha a muerte. En esas condiciones, nosotros vivimos por la imposición del imperialismo norteamericano.
How much Cuban repression is a reaction to the constant threat of U.S.-backed regime change? This is an open question. It's been much debated. We'll never know, probably. Cuba has been criticized for its high prison population. Most reports have it listed around 6th highest in the world, with, in fact, the United States topping the list. They have a lot of...
USA.
Number one.
Number one.
Cuba has a lot of like arcane drug laws. And obviously a lot of imprisonments for dissidents. It could be vastly more democratic. It's not fair to say that the government doesn't have massive support from the Cuban people. It does. Changes to the Cuban Constitution must be ratified by referendum. The most recent referendum on the Constitution liberalized markets further, created protected classes, and legalized gay marriage and LGBTQ rights. And the most recent constitution passed with 90% approval. Cuba has not been under just sanctions, but an embargo by the U.S. since the Cuban Revolution. William Leo Grand called it the oldest and most comprehensive U.S. economic sanctions regime against any country in the world. Despite this, Cuba is a leader in the doctor-to-patient ratio. It's the highest in the world. Has the highest literacy in the world at 99.8%. Has almost no homelessness. 85% of Cubans own their own homes and pay no property taxes or mortgage interest. And unemployment in Cuba is usually around 1.8%, but during the pandemic it went through the roof and is now topping the charts at 2%. Why is Cuba so upsetting to the United States that it has this unique embargo against it? It's a lefty government, and any lefty government, is going to be... The whole point is to crush it. That way you can say it failed. It's the same thing they did in Venezuela. They crushed the country. They put huge sanctions against it, crush its economy, and then say, look, it failed. See, it doesn't work.
It's this weird...
You don't need to nationalize your industries. Let Americans get all the profits.
Yeah, it's this weird legacy left over from a past time that
Well, I don't think it's a legacy. I think it's a result of the fact that they want to keep the money flowing. The money is still flowing. These companies still own interests in the South and Central American countries.
But there are not embargoes happening against Bolivia. I'm sure there's still a lot of these old U.S. colonial holdings in South America.
There were heavy
still
sanctions
different
against Venezuela, under Chavez especially.
There's under specific governments, under like the Chavez government.
Right.
But if somebody else, he was kind of a particular case. There's not just a blanket against Venezuela.
I think
embargo
you're
against
asking why
Venezuela.
the severity is so much worse against Cuba. And
Yeah, that's what I'm speaking to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a legacy from a past time, and I don't think anybody in the U.S. really knows why we're still doing it. They're not the same country that they were when the embargo started. One of the good things that Obama did was lift the embargo, and unfortunately, Trump reinstated it. Yeah,
added new sanctions on top.
He just wants people to think he's got a big dick.
Well, Castro was actually given money by the CIA during the beginnings of the revolution, because Castro didn't come out and say in the beginning that he was going to nationalize industry. He didn't really let that on. The United States gave him some money. It wasn't a lot of money. It was like $15,000 or something, if I remember. I could be off on that, but and then after the revolution, the U.S. was playing this waiting game to see what he was going to do, and he went ahead and nationalized the sugar industry. Correction, he first nationalized a few oil refineries that the U.S. owned, and that's when they went apeshit.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think they felt betrayed.
Really hurt their feelings.
Well, maybe.
All we can do is create awareness, but politics are going to be politics. And while they figure out what they figure out, we need to figure out how to really help. We need to get creative. We need to figure out solutions. While they're losing their lives over there literally for something that we wake up every day and appreciate, which is freedom.
And it's not like, Castro didn't have any intention of going to the USSR and being like, hey, help me out here. He really didn't have a choice after the embargo.
Yeah.
I mean, these statistics are remarkable given the situation in Cuba. I mean, the literacy, they ship doctors out to all over. They have their own COVID vaccine.
Yeah, they recently offered, where was it? It was
pretty good for a third world nation.
Yeah, they're kind of notorious in Central and South America for sending different aid relief, envoys of doctors and whatnot to these countries that are stricken by natural disaster or whatever. I believe it was a hurricane that we had here in the U.S. some years back.
Oh yeah.
They ended up they offered to send 100 doctors or something like that. I'm sure we turned it down.
The U.S. refused. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, seems like you need some help up there.
Like people stranded on rooftops. That's when the levee broke. Remember?
Yeah.
Katrina. What about anarcho-capitalism? I heard that was good. This is the idea that the free market can replace the functions of government that are necessary. For example, protecting property rights, enforcing contract law, and military defense. And the thinking is that crony capitalism sucks because of government interventions. Not because of capitalism, but because of government interventions, like subsidies. So the thinking is we take away the subsidies, which are tax breaks, and at the same time give them tax breaks. So I'm not sure what the thinking is. Frankly, it doesn't make any sense. So it's just net zero for them, isn't it?
Oh, it's a net positive because on top of the other things, you're taking away all the regulations on them.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Now you can't fine them for dumping toxic sludge into rivers. You can't. It's so silly.
Well, this is the same thing as the Tankies, right? Anarcho-capitalism is appealing because of the same reason the Tankies find appeal. There's money flowing into it from moneyed interests. There's no money flowing into libertarian socialism. Nobody's out here preaching freaking Anton Pannekoek and Murray Bookchin.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense why money would flow into anarcho-capitalist, think tanks.
Anything that remotely tries to improve society through redistributive properties is instantly demonized with the label of communism. It gets massive support from the wealthiest people in the world, like the Koch brothers. And here is a clip from David Friedman, grandson of Milton Friedman, father of libertarianism, trying to explain why anarcho-capitalism would make the world a better place. Grandson of of Milton Friedman here.
What makes you think that this structured anarcho-capitalist world would be a better place to live in?
Yeah, there are two different questions. One of them. One is, would it be a better place? And one is, would it work? But in terms of the better place, the argument is that while people think about government in terms of what it could do or what it says it does, if you actually look at what government does, it on the whole makes things worse, not better. So if you think in general, for example, in the U.S., there was a lot of talk about how we needed to do things about COVID. The first thing the U.S. government did was to forbid people from using any tests except the one they put out, and then to discover after a few weeks that the one they put out didn't work. That would be one very small example. But in general, I think that governments, that the way I put it in my talk is.
So this is a point he's repeated often. He doesn't have a good answer here. This is such a smart question, dude. They totally nail him with this question. Why do you think anarcho-capitalism would make the world a better place? He doesn't have an answer because it doesn't make the world a better place whatsoever. There's no logical reason why it would. He can't come up with anything. He just repeats his talking point about the COVID response. It's pretty hilarious. And this is one of the main spokespeople for this philosophy, you know.
I find this just one of the most a boring philosophy. It's there's
a lot of money to be gained by spouting this crap.
I mean, listen, I'll do it. If somebody's going to pay me money, I'll make these arguments, but I just don't find them interesting.
You could do better than this, surely. You could do better than Michael Malice and David Friedman.
I'll tell you what, Koch brothers, you give me that, give me a little stipend in a couple months. I'll come up with some good talking points, some good arguments.
So that's going to do it for this week. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, it's fun as always. Got a couple things I want to talk about next week. Maybe I want to do some. You ever heard of Klaus Schwab?
No.
He's the head of the World Economic Forum. He's an interesting guy. My mom is really worried about him. Apparently, he's trying to take over the world, depopulate. So, going to do a little investigative journalism.
Sounds like he's friends with Bill Gates, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Anyways, MetaMaxPerformance.com, ShireHempFarms.com. Check us out. Support us. James,
see you guys
peace.
next week. Later.
Later.